If you have spent enough time exploring the lands between, you have probably had at least one encounter that caught you completely off guard. You visited a merchant you have seen before, sit down at a site of grace, pass the time until night, and suddenly something feels wrong. The merchant is gone. The atmosphere has changed, and standing where they once were is a silent warrior carrying a sword that seems to move through the air on its own. This enemy is known as the Bell Bearing Hunter, and while many players remember him as the recurring mini boss, his story is actually much more interesting than it first appears. The first thing to understand is that the Bell Bearing Hunter isn't his real identity. Behind the armor is a man named Elemer of the Briar, one of the most dangerous individuals in the lands between. Elmer came from a distant land known as Eochaid. We don't know a great deal about itself, but we do know that it was famous for a unique style of swordsmanship. Unlike ordinary warriors, the fighters of Eochaid could control their weapons through sheer force of will. That's why Elimer's sword seems to float around the battlefield attacking from impossible angles. It isn't a magical illusion, it's a skill connected to his homeland and one that very few people were capable of mastering. Long before he became known as the bell bearing hunter, Elmer had already earned a dark reputation. At some point in his life, he became a criminal so notorious that he was eventually captured and sentenced to death. The exact details of his crimes are never fully explained, but whatever he had done was serious enough for execution to be considered the only solution. His sentence brought him to Shattered Castle, a decaying fortress ruled by House Maris. The castle was known for its poison filled surroundings and its declining noble family. Elimer was brought there as a prisoner, and by all accounts, his story should have ended within its walls. Instead, the opposite happened. Somehow, Elmer escaped his fate. Rather than dying in captivity, he turned his table on its captors. He seized control of the castle and slaughtered members of House Maris. By the time players arrive at the shaded castle, Elmer has effectively made the fortress his own. This is also where he earned the title of the Briar. His armor became wrapped in cruel thorn like briars, giving him the appearance of someone who had transformed himself into a walking weapon. The briar became part of his identity, a symbol of the violent path he had chosen. But even after taking the castle, Elimer's story didn't end there. Across the lands between, merchants began disappearing. These weren't warriors or nobles. They were ordinary traders who spent their life traveling from places to places, selling goods and surviving in a world that was already falling apart. One by one, they become targets. The game never directly shows us every murder, but it leaves behind enough clues to piece together what happened. Elemer hunted merchants and collected their bell bearing. To understand why this matters, we need to talk about what a bell bearing actually is. In Elden Ring, a bell bearing is an item that represents a merchant's inventory and trade connections. When a merchant dies, their bell bearing can often be given to a twin maiden husk at Round Table Hold, allowing their goods to remain available. The bell bearing hunter earned his name because he hunted the owners of these bell bearings. Every encounter with him takes place at location connected to merchants, strongly implying that he tracked them down and killed them throughout the lands between. What's fascinating is that Elden Ring never gives us a clear reason for why he did this. Unlike characters such as Rani, Morgoth, or Mog, Elemer doesn't seem to have a grand ambition. He isn't trying to become a god. He isn't fighting for a kingdom. He isn't attempting to reshape the world. His motives remains a mystery. Maybe he was driven by greed. Maybe he wanted the merchant's possession. Maybe years of violence had simply turned him into someone who lived only for the hunt. The game leaves that question unanswered. And in a strange way, that is what makes him so memorable. Many of the Elden Ring's villains are larger than life. They are demigods, rulers, and legendary figures whose actions affect the fate of entire nations. Elima feels different. His story is smaller but also more personal. He is a criminal who escaped death seized a castle, and spent his entire years hunting travelers across the world. By the time we finally defeat him, there are still questions surrounding his life that may never be answered. But one thing is clear, the bell bearing hunter wasn't some supernatural monster lurking in the darkness. He was Elemer of the Briar, and that reality is far more unsettling.